Hello viewers, welcome to Perspectives Today on Imra TV. I am MARYAM OlugboDE. In the bustling streets of Lagos, in the crowded market of Kano, and in the rural farmlands of Benue, a single phrase is gaining momentum. Tinubu, we are hungry. It is not a political slogan. It is not a campaign chant. It is a desperate plea from millions of Nigerians struggling to survive in an economy that has turned against them. Meanwhile, Netanyahu has sent a strong warning. Resume the hostage releases, or we resume the military crackdown. All of this and more coming, but first the news headlines. Tinubu, we are hungry. Now popular song on Nigerian sleeves. Catholic bishop wants. Why some Ghanaians are fighting in insurgency. 8 Burkina Faso. Israel will end the Gaza ceasefire if Hamas does not release hostages on Saturday, Benjamin Netanyahu says. Google Maps changes Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America for US users. Italian police arrest around 130 people in massive mafia crackdown. Except expected to push NATO and EU to take more responsibility for Ukraine. Now to the news and details. From food vendors to taxi drivers, student to civil servant, the frustration is the same. The cost of living has spiraled beyond control, and for many, 3 meals a day have become a luxury. The Catholic Bishop of Ekiti, Felix Ajakaye, has joined the growing chorus of connected and concerned voices. In a strongly worded statement, he warned that Nigeria is on the brink of social explosion. Hunger does not recognize political affiliations. A starving population will not sit quietly and watch, he said. His message to President Bola Tinubu was clear. Act now, or risk losing control. Nigeria's economy has faced turbulence before, but never like this. The statistics paint a grim picture. Inflation is at its highest, with food prices skyrocketing beyond the reach of ordinary citizens. The naira has lost over 50% of its value since mid-2023, making import almost unaffordable. Fuel prices have tripled since the removal of subsidies, leading to increased transportation costs and a rise in the price of goods. Electricity tariffs, it has solved worsening conditions for businesses and households alike. Unemployment remains stubbornly high, with companies downsizing due to the harsh economic climate, and the result, a growing number of Nigerians slipping into poverty. The World Bank estimates that 133 million Nigerians now live in multi-dimensional poverty, meaning they struggle with food insecurity, poor healthcare, and a lack of essential services. It is in this context that the phrase, Tinubu, we are hungry, has emerged, not as a political attack, but as a desperate call for relief. Tinubu came to power on the back of his renewed hope agenda. His government promised economic reforms that would stabilize the country, attract investment, and improve living standards. But for millions of Nigerians, the reality has been the opposite. On his first day in office, Tinubu removed the fuel subsidy, a move that sent shockwaves through the economy. Transport fees doubled overnight, and within weeks, food prices followed. His administration also decided to float the naira, allowing market forces to determine its value. But instead of stability, the naira plummeted. making imported goods, including essential foodstuffs, far more expensive. Government officials continue to urge patience, insisting that the pain is temporary and that reforms take time to yield results. But why? But patience, as many Nigerians will tell you, does not put food on the table. Bishop Ajakaye put it bluntly. Nigerians have been asked to endure, but how long should people endure hunger, suffering? How long before desperation turns into unrest? Will the government listen? In 2012, the Occupy Nigeria movement erupted in response to fuel subsidy removal under President Goodluck Jonathan. The protest spread nationwide, bringing the country to a standstill and forcing the government to partially reinstate the subsidy. In 2020, the EndSARS movement, initially aimed at ending police brutality, became a larger protest against bad governance and economic hardship. The youth-led demonstrations shook the nation. And while the movement was eventually suppressed, it sent a clear message: Nigerians will not stay silent forever. Now in 2025, the warning signs are once again flashing vividly. Hunger is a more powerful motivator than ideology. When people can no longer afford to feed their families, history has shown that they take to the streets. Will Tinubu's government listen before it's too late? That is the real question, the big question. And the government is scrambling to respond. Although there are reports of new palliative measures, including plans to distribute food aid and cash transfers to vulnerable citizens, economic advisors are urging patience, promising that the long-term benefit of subsidy removal and currency reforms will soon materialize. But for Nigerians living in the present, struggling to afford a bag of rice or a loaf of bread, these promises sound hollow. For now, the chants continue. Tinubu, we are hungry. And if history is any guide, the government will be wise to listen. Because when words stop working, the street actions start talking. Moving on. Why are Ghanaians fighting in Burkina Faso's insurgency? Burkina Faso is on fire. Islamist insurgents have turned vast regions of the country into war zones, terrorizing civilians and forcing the government into a desperate fight for survival. The military is struggling. Jihadist groups are advancing. But here is a twist. Some of the fighters on the battlefield aren't even Burkinabe. Reports now reveal that Ghanaian nationals are crossing the border to take part in this war. But why are Ghanaians fighting Burkina Faso? That's a big question. 3 Ghanaian men recently came forward and admitted they had joined the conflict. They claim they fought alongside insurgents. But here is the catch. They insist they are not jihadists. They say they are not driven by religion or ideology, no extremist training, no radicalization. So what exactly is motivating them? Money? Survival? Or something much bigger? To understand why Ghanaians are involved, we must look at the bigger picture. For years, West Africa has been battling the rise of jihadist movement. From Mali to Niger, from Nigeria to Burkina Faso, extremist groups have spread like wildfire. Ghana, however, has remained largely untouched. No major terrorist attacks, no report of armed insurgents marching through its cities. But does that mean Ghana is safe? Or is this something happening beneath the surface? Intelligence reports suggest that jihadist groups have been using northern Ghana as a safe zone. They don't carry out attacks there, but they do operate in secret. They buy food, fuel, and medical supplies. They even sell stolen livestock to fund their operations. Ghana's markets have unknowingly become a part of the extremist supply chain. And it doesn't stop there. Some reports claim that injured jihadis are secretly receiving medical treatment in Ghana. Others say the militants are using Ghana's unpatrolled border regions as transit routes for smuggling weapons and recruit. So here's the real question. Why has Ghana been spared? Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are all suffering from relentless attacks. But Ghana has remained largely untouched. Is it luck? Or is there an unwritten rule at play? Some security analysts believe that the jihadists see Ghana as too valuable to attack. They rely on Ghanaian markets, hospitals, and supply chains. If they launch attacks, Ghana's military could crack down hard, and that will cut off their lifeline. So instead, they operate quietly. They recruit in silence, and they wait. The Ghanaian government has responded swiftly to this report. Officials insist that Ghana is not a breeding ground for militants. They claim that the military is actively monitoring the borders and that no terrorist groups are using Ghana as a safe haven. In a recent statement, Ghana's National Security Ministry dismissed claims of a non-aggression understanding with the jihadists. We do not negotiate with terrorists, a spokesperson declared. Our forces are vigilant, and our counter-terrorism efforts have been highly effective. But here is the problem. Deniers don't always match reality. The fact that Ghanaians are fighting in Burkina Faso proves that extremist groups are making inroads. So here is the real question. How deep does this infiltration go? The situation is tense. If Ghana's government is wrong, if extremists have indeed taken root, it's only a matter of time before the violence spills over. Jihadist groups don't stay quiet forever. Today, they may be using Ghana as a supply base. Tomorrow, they could turn it into a battlefield. The world has seen this pattern before. Mali, once a stable nation, fell to insurgents in 2012. Burkina Faso, once a peaceful country, is not drowning in violence. Ghana could be next. For now, the government insists everything is under control. But the fact remains, Ghanaians are fighting Burkina Faso's war. The country may not be at war today, but if these warning signs are ignored, that could change very soon. West Africa is at a crossroads. The choice is simple. Act now or face the consequences later. Ticking time bomb. Israel to end Gaza ceasefire if Hamas fails to release hostages. The ceasefire in Gaza is on borrowed time. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has issued an ultimatum.
In light of Hamas's announcement of its decision to violate the agreement and not release our hostages, last night I ordered the military to gather forces inside and around the Gaza Strip.
If Hamas does not release the remaining hostages by Saturday, Israel will resume its military campaign in full force. The message is clear. The waiting game is over. We have exercised restraint. We've honored the ceasefire. But our patience is not infinite. If Hamas thinks it can drag this out indefinitely, it is mistaken. Netanyahu declared in a televised speech. His warning was direct. Either the hostages are freed or the bombs start falling again. The ceasefire broke out through intense diplomatic effort by the United States, Egypt, and Qatar was meant to de-escalate the conflict and secure the release of Israeli and foreign hostages. While some have been freed, Hamas is still holding on to several captives, using them as bargaining chips. Israeli officers say Hamas is making fresh demands, more Palestinian prisoners, an extended ceasefire, and reduced military presence. But Israel, they're refusing to negotiate under pressure. We will not let Hamas dictate the terms. They started this war, and they will not decide how it ends, an Israeli government spokesperson stated. On the other hand, Hamas is playing its usual game, dragging out negotiations while strengthening its position. It has done this before. It will do it again. Israel military machine is not standing still. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, remain on high alert, with troops stationed along the Gaza border, drones monitoring movement, and airstrike plans in place. Military analysts suggest that if the ceasefire collapses, Israel will launch a two-pronged offensive, precision airstrikes targeting Hamas leaders, and a ground assault to dismantle its remaining strongholds. The IDF has already cut up reserve units and instructed combat divisions to be prepared for immediate action. Sources indicate that key Hamas command centers, weapon depots, and tunnel networks have been identified for targeted strikes. While Israel prepares for war, the international community is pushing for continued negotiations. The United Nations has warned that another round of fighting could lead to a humanitarian catastrophe. The US and European allies are urging Netanyahu to extend the truce and give diplomacy more time. Egypt and Qatar, the key mediators, are scrambling to find a last-minute solution, but Netanyahu has made his stance clear. Israel will not be held hostage by diplomatic talks while its citizens remain in captivity. We're fighting a terrorist organization, not a government. If they want peace, they should act like it. If they don't, we'll make sure they regret it, an Israeli official told reporters. But is history repeating itself? This is not the first time a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has been a ticking time bomb. Every truce in recent history has been temporary. The 2024 Gaza war, a ceasefire collapsed multiple times before finally taking hold. The 2021 conflict, the 11-day war ended in a truce, but tensions never truly disappeared. The 2023 clashes, another short-lived ceasefire that did little to prevent further violence. And now, in 2025, the pattern continues. Hamas has a history of using ceasefires as a tool to regroup, rearm, and restart conflict on its own terms. This time, Israel is signaling that it will not play along. So what happens next? As the deadline approaches, all eyes are on Hamas. Will they meet Israel's demand and release the hostages? Or will they call Netanyahu's bluff? If history is any indication, war is not a matter of if, but when. And when it begins, Gaza will once again be in the line of fire. Google renames Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America for US users. The map hasn't changed, but the name has. Google has quietly renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, but only for users in the United States. There was no official announcement, no public statement, just a quiet alteration on Google Maps, first spotted by sharp-eyed internet users. What followed was an international firestorm. Mexico is outraged. Latin American leaders are calling it a digital land grab, and social media a full-scale war. The discovery was accidental. A Texas-based journalist searching for hurricane updates noticed the change, where Gulf of Mexico had always been, the label now read Gulf of America. Within hours, screenshots flooded social media. Confusion turned to outrage. Was this a glitch? A rebranding? A political statement? Google remained silent for an entire day. Then came the carefully worded response. Google Maps provides region-specific naming conventions based on user location and language preferences. Both Gulf of Mexico and Gulf of America remain visible depending on settings. In other words, if you're in the US, you see Gulf of America. If you are anywhere else, it's still Gulf of Mexico. Mexican officials wasted no time in responding. Foreign Minister Alicia Becana called the renaming an unacceptable rewriting of geography and demanded an immediate reversal. We did not need Google's permission to exist, she declared. And the Mexican government has formally lodged a complaint, calling the change a distortion of historical and geographical facts. President Andres Manuel López Obrador, never one to shy away from criticism of the US, slammed the move as a sign of arrogance, and warned that Mexico will not tolerate such disrespect. Across Latin America, the outrage is growing. Prominent historians and politicians are calling it an attempt to erase Mexico's influence. This is not the first time Google has been caught alerting digital geography. Government used to redraw maps. Now tech companies do it with a software update. But consider these past controversies. The Crimea 2014. For Russian users, Google Maps displayed Crimea as part of Russia. The rest of the world saw it as Ukrainian territory. The Persian Gulf versus Arabian Gulf. To avoid angering either Iran or Arab nations, Google Maps removed the name entirely for years. Taiwan 2020. Under Chinese pressure, Google blurred Taiwan's borders, subtly downgrading its status. The Arunachal Pradesh 2023. Google showed the Indian state as part of China when viewed from Chinese IP addresses. Now in 2025, the Gulf of Mexico has been digitally rebranded. Why now? 2024 was an election year. US-Mexico relations have been strained over immigration, border security, and trade dispute. Could this be an attempt to push a nationalist narrative? Some believe so. American conservative commentators have hailed the change, calling it long overdue and a correction of history. Others see it as an extension of a broader geopolitical strategy, reframing the Gulf as a predominantly American waterway rather than a shared one. Mexican historian Eric Cruz called it digital imperialism. If we allow tech companies to rewrite maps, soon they will rewrite history. Too much power? Google controls 92% of the world's search engine market. Its map service is used by over 1 billion people. A change like this is not just a label, it's a shift in perception. Cartography has always been political. Borders have been drawn and redrawn by empires. Now Silicon Valley has that power. A simple name change today. What next? Could Taiwan disappear from maps in the future? Could disputed island be renamed overnight? Mexico has lodged an official complaint demanding an immediate reversal. The US government, they have remained silent. Google has said it. It is reviewing feedback. But for now, American users will continue to see Gulf of America on their screens. So the real question is, if Google can rename an ocean, what else can it change? And more importantly, we'll get to decide what the world looks like. Also, Italy's mafia empire under siege. 130 arrested in mega crackdown.
The largest coordinated operation in the fight against Italian organized crime. According to Europol, the 'Ndrangheta network focused on trafficking drugs from South America to Europe and Australia. The mafia group is also accused of supplying weapons from Pakistan to South American criminal groups.
$1 billion crime syndicate brought to its knees. 130 arrests. An empire of extortion, drugs, and corruption shattered in a single night. Italy's most feared mafia organizations, the 'Ndrangheta, Cosa Nostra, and Camorra, have been hit with one of the largest crackdowns in history. A nationwide sting operation led by Italian law enforcement has dismantled high-ranking bosses, enforcers, and political allies who kept the underworld thriving. This is a historic strike against the mafia, said Interior Minister Matteo Piantedosi. The Italian state is not afraid. The mafia will fall, but will it? The mafia survived centuries of war, assassinations, and arrests. Is this the beginning of the end, or just another temporary setback for Italy's most notorious crime families? The operation unfolded across Sicily, Calabria, Naples, and Milan. At dawn, hundreds of police officers stormed hidden bunkers, luxury villas, and mafia-controlled businesses. Helicopters hovered over suspected safe houses, and armed officers secured entire city blocks. Millions of euros in cash hidden in underground vaults. Dozens of luxury cars and properties were traced through illegal money laundering. Weapons and encrypted communication devices used to coordinate assassinations and drug shipment. This was not a random crackdown. It was years in the making. Who was taken down? The mafia CEOs of crime. This operation wasn't just about street criminals. The people arrested were the masterminds, the financiers, the enforcers, the politicians who enabled them. The biggest name among them, a top lieutenant of 'Ndrangheta, known as Il Fantasma, which means the ghost. He was a key player in the European drug trade, laundering billions through offshore accounts. Alongside him, police arrested Camorra hitmen responsible for a wave of assassinations in Naples. Sicilian Cosa Nostra leaders running illegal betting networks. Corrupt government officials accused of shielding mafia operations in exchange for bribes. This isn't just organized crime. It is a parallel government. Of all the mafia groups in Italy, one stands above the rest, the 'Ndrangheta. Born in Calabria, this syndicate has become the richest criminal organization in the world. It controls 80% of Europe's cocaine trade, working with South American cartels. Billions in money laundering operations, using fake companies, cryptocurrencies, and offshore banks. Politicians on judges, ensuring that their empire remains untouchable, unlike the Sicilian Cosa Nostra, which has been weakened over the years. The 'Ndrangheta is growing. It operates like a fortune, 500 company with strict hierarchies, coded language, and international expansion. Today, they are not just in Italy. They control drug routes from South America to Africa. They have safe houses in Germany, money in Swiss banks, and allies in the Middle East. And now, their leadership is under attack. The mafia's business model. Italy's mafia is no longer just an Italian problem. It is a global menace. The 'Ndrangheta alone generates €50 billion annually, more than McDonald's or Netflix. The operations span through Europe, controlling the cocaine trade from Spain to Germany. In South America, direct ties with Colombian and Mexican cartels. Through Africa, using ports in Libya and Morocco for smuggling routes. In Australia, infiltrating local businesses for money laundering. And now, law enforcement worldwide is racing to keep up. Italy has been fighting the mafia for decades. This crackdown is a victory, but history tells us that victories against the mafia are never permanent. Consider 1992. Anti-mafia judges Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino were assassinated after cracking down on Cosa Nostra. Also in 2006, the Sicilian mafia boss Bernardo Provenzano was arrested after 40 years on the run, but mafia still survived. Likewise in 2023, Italy's most wanted man, Matteo Messina Denaro, was finally caught. But the next generation of mafia leaders were already waiting. This time, police say they have dismantled entire networks. But the mafia has a way of adapting. The real question is, can Italy keep up? So what happens next? The Italian government is celebrating this crackdown, but the mafia is resilient. More arrests expected as investigators uncover deeper connections. Banks and corporations are being investigated for helping launder mafia money. International law enforcement is on high alert, tracking mafia operations beyond Italy's borders. For now, the message is clear. The state is fighting back, but this is just one battle in a war that has lasted for centuries. Can the mafia be defeated, or will it always rise again? That is the question Italy must answer, and the world is watching. Except to NATO and EU, step up or step aside on Ukraine. The US is no longer Ukraine's blank check. The Trump administration is shifting gears, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has a clear message for NATO and European Union.
There are no plans right now in the making to cut anything. There is a understanding that we're going to review force posture across the world, right? President Trump's planning assumptions are different in many ways, or at least strategic assumptions, than Joe Biden's were. We certainly don't want to plan on the back of the withdrawal from Afghanistan and what happened on October 7th and the war that was unleashed in Ukraine. You have to manage and mitigate those things by coming alongside your friends in Israel, ensuring their defense, and peacefully resolving the conflict in Ukraine. But those shouldn't define how we orient, and with hopefully a rapid peace deal in Ukraine, which the President is committed to delivering, we can then review.
For over 2 years, the US has led the West's response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It has sent advanced weapons, provided real-time intelligence, and poured over $100 billion into Ukraine's war effort. Washington has done the heavy lifting, while Europe debated, hesitated, and relied on American leadership. But those days are over. Except a firm advocate of America-first foreign policy is expected to push NATO and US leaders to step up their commitment. Less American funding, more European action. The question is no longer whether Ukraine will receive support. The question is who will provide it. The Americans first shift. No more free rides for NATO. The Trump administration is redefining America's role in global conflict. Unlike its predecessor, this administration is skeptical of endless military aid without accountability. Hegseth's argument is straightforward. NATO must increase its defense spending. The days of European nations relying on US funding are over. The EU must take the lead in military aid. America won't be the first responder to every crisis. NATO needs a new strategy, one that doesn't depend on Washington making all the tough calls. But here is the problem. Europe is divided. While some countries are willing to take on the greater role, others are reluctant. The UK and Poland are pushing for more military aid and tougher action against Russia. Meanwhile, Germany and France want diplomatic solutions over military escalation. For Hungary and Slovakia, they are openly skeptical of continued support for Ukraine. This division is why the US has led the way for so long, because NATO struggles to act without American direction. And now, Donald Trump is back in the White House. His administration sees things differently. If NATO is truly an alliance, then all members must contribute equally. But can NATO handle this pressure? Except, it is expected to put NATO and EU leaders on 3 critical points. First is the financial burden share. NATO members must meet and exceed their 2% GDP defense spending target. The second, weapons production. Europe must ramp up arms manufacturing and stop waiting for US supplies. And lastly is the strategic autonomy. The EU must coordinate military support for Ukraine without relying on Washington. These demands are not suggestions, they are expectations. The US will not abandon Ukraine, but it will not carry NATO on its back forever. What happens if the US pulls back? Ukraine cannot win this war without Western aid, and that is the fact. Without US weapons, Ukraine's counteroffensive could stall. Without US intelligence, Kyiv could lose its battlefield advantage. Without American funding, Ukraine's military could struggle to sustain oppression. So what happens next? Will NATO finally take leadership in Ukraine's defense? Will the EU build a self-sufficient military strategy? Or will Ukraine be left exposed to Russia's next offensive? This is about more than just Ukraine. This is about NATO's survival. For decades, Washington has been the backbone of the alliance. But now, the US is asking, why should American taxpayers protect Europe while Europe hesitates to protect itself? The answer will determine NATO's future. Will European nations rise to the challenge? Or will NATO crumble under the weight of Washington's withdrawal? One thing is clear, the free ride is over. And the exit isn't waiting for Europe to catch up. Before I leave, here are the news headlines. Tinubu, we are hungry. Now popular song on Nigerians' lips. Catholic bishop wants. Why some Ghanaians are fighting in insurgency heat. Burkina Faso. Israel will end the Gaza ceasefire if Hamas doesn't release hostages on Saturday, Benjamin Netanyahu says. Google Maps changes Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America for US users. Italian police arrest around 130 people in a massive mafia crackdown. Except expected to push NATO and EU to take more responsibility for Ukraine. Thanks for staying tuned. Once again, I'm MARYAM OlugboDE.